Somebody tell me if it's worth going on. Stuck in the saddle from the first light of dawn, worrying if dying one of them horns stuck in my belly is worth being born. Stuck in the saddle for finding $1 a day.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're Burnin Daylight.
Howdy there. How we feeling this morning, Daylight Burners? I'm doing pretty good over here on my end. I had a really cool conversation this morning with a gal who calls herself Calamity Cass. She is cowboying up in Montana right now. She also owns a little leather business that she does, and just kind of an all-around badass buckaroo gal. And she had some really cool stories. We had a good time visiting, and I think you're gonna like her. I came across her because she followed me on Instagram, and then she had messaged me to. She actually shared that Cowboy Crossroads podcast with Ramblin' Jack Elliott. She said, "You really got to listen to this guy," and she was right. He was really cool, really fun to listen to, and now I'm going to try to get him on the show. I don't know if that's in the cards or not, but I'm going to try. And anyway, I had a couple people that I wanted to interview today that didn't really work out. Just schedule didn't line up, and so I sent her a message and said, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And she said, "Sure, why not?" So she logged on, and we had a good chat. And you'll have to excuse some of the audio where it seems like I'm not paying attention, and I really was. I was trying to listen to Cass's story, and at the same time we had a heifer that had just dropped a calf and was kind of acting like maybe she had a twin up in there. So I was working on that, and then we had to move the calf, and I tried to just pack him on the saddle, and the old Karma mare was not having any of it. So then I ended up having to walk him to or carry him down to the pen where we wanted him to go with his mama, and so I was huffing and puffing pretty good because it's not sober October yet, and I'm not in shape. So anyway, excuse all that. And there's a couple other mishaps, but that happened. But anyway, yeah, it's a really cool gal. I think you're gonna like her, and welcome her to the show, Miss Calamity Cass.
We're recording now.
Perfect.
All right.
Bring it on.
Perfect. Welcome, Daylight Burners. Got a special guest on the show today. She is a gal that seems to be pretty punchy, pretty handy. She has messaged me several times recommending some people to talk to, and has been on my ass to get Ramblin' Jack Elliott on the show, which I'm trying to do. But anyway, Miss Calamity Cass, how the hell are you today?
Pretty good. I'm here in town getting several trucks worked on that have been in town many times this summer, and wishing I would have just drove them into the reservoir instead of taking them back into town again at this point. But it's an excuse for a morning twisted tea and chat with a new person, so that's all right.
Perfect. Well, you are up in Montana, is that right?
I am, yeah, currently.
Perfect. Where are you from originally?
I was born in Idaho, but I don't really claim that.
Oh?
Yeah, I lived all over. I kind of claim Eastern Oregon as my home, as where I go back to, but I was born in northern Idaho.
Okay. So you're kind of just you're from kind of the western part of the U.S. in general.
Yeah.
Cool. And you own a ranch? Are you working on a ranch, or what do you got going on?
I do not own a ranch. I'm working on a ranch north of Miles City right now.
Oh, okay. And is it a pretty small spread, big spread? What do you got?
It's pretty big. Altogether, I think 6,000 mother cows, probably, I think we got 1,500 replacement heifers and 2,300 grass heifers right now out at camp. And then we don't have all the mother cows out there. That's kind of all spread out over north of Miles City area. We've probably got 3,000 of the mother cows out there, and then a couple other, pairs right now, and then a couple other places around here.
Cool. So that's pretty.
I'm at camp.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good spread. And the grass is pretty good up that direction, and then you guys got quite a bit of grass.
Yeah, it's surprisingly, it's kind of a weird, really interesting ecosystem, I guess. Nothing I've ever really experienced. It's really dry, lots of sagebrush and junipers and type of thing you see in the Southwest, but in between it all is a bunch of grass, so it's a little different.
Well, that's
from
cool.
What I'm used to seeing.
Yeah, you're Eastern Oregon. You're used to just sagebrush, aren't you? Pretty well.
Actually, where I was outside of, I've been a few places in Eastern Oregon, but where I was working horseback with cattle was outside of Pendleton in the Blue Mountains there, and that was pretty much forested ponderosa, Doug fir, and grass.
Okay.
And then there's the edges of it were kind of sagebrush, grassy, kind of like here.
Okay. Well, cool. So you're kind of a big circle buckaroo gal then.
No.
No?
Absolutely not. I wish. I'm working on it, but I wasn't. I mean, I haven't been a cowboy my whole life. I've always kind of wanted to be one, and I've always been around horses my whole life and stuff, and I just I was like 20, I just kind of I put my stuff in a storage unit and left to pursue my cowboy dreams, and just kind of ended up in a lot of weird places, and then in the past few years kind of just lucked out with some real cowboy jobs.
Live.
I've started learning that whole stuff, but I'm no buckaroo by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm definitely working on it.
Right on. Well, yeah, it seems like you got you're at least doing it anyways. You may not consider yourself one, but you're sure enough working on a big outfit, so that counts for something.
Yeah, I just kind of when I got my job here, I mean, I definitely felt underqualified for it, but I was in between jobs, and I just kind of was hanging around Montana, texting people. This is about a year ago now that I had met around here. I was like, anybody got a cowboy job? And this guy that had helped me saddle my first ranch bronc last year was the only one to reply to me, and I didn't know anything about him really, but I knew he was a cowboy.
I think so.
And he was like, yeah, I got you a job 2 days later, and I was sleeping in this teepee in Paradise Valley, Montana, in front of the old saloon, just kind of partying and waiting to see if something would happen. Otherwise, I was going to go back to Eastern Oregon and probably throw down in the saddle shop there that I always go back to and work in, and just see what I could find there. But I ended up getting a job out here, and I was like, oh, this is a big deal. It's a big place, but I'll just fake it till I make it, and it actually worked. So I'm pretty happy.
Cool. Well, good deal. That's pretty neat. It seems like a lot of people that fall into the cowboy deal just kind of. A lot of people don't grow up around it. They always want to, and it's you kind of got to be a little bit free spirited and independent, and yeah, there's a lot of people that just end up like that, looking for a job and making a hand eventually, just out of sheer will more than anything.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I kind of got forced into it a little bit. I don't know if I'd say it was my first choice, but I didn't have much of a choice. My second time on horseback, I think I rode 25 miles and then come down with the flu that same day. And so not only was I had blisters upon blisters on my ass, but I also was running like 103 fever the next day, and I thought I was going to die, and probably would have been happy if I would have. But
Down.
so it was kind of forced down my throat, but I'm glad for it. I learned a work ethic from it, and now there's you find out real quick there ain't much money in it, but you can get by if you're handy enough, and you kind of diversify your talents a little bit. You can always pick up some money here and there and make things work. But if you're just straight cowboying, you ain't ever going to be rich.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, unless you're born into it, from what I understand and what I've gathered from it, like, unless you're born into it or are a really hot barrel racer that winds up with a really fancy team roper dude, I mean, you're pretty much, I mean, you know, I'm actually making a pretty good living here. I mean, I think this is a pretty sweet spot I'm in. I wouldn't say that I'd stay here forever, but I mean, we got really nice housing covered. And you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I had a phone call come in, but
oh, that's okay.
So anyway, I was saying, yeah, you're saying if you're born into it, you might be able to be rich. But one of the good quotes I've read it several times is, if you want to be a millionaire in the cattle business, start with $1 billion. And that's a great about one. Right. That's about right. If you start with $1 billion, you'll eventually be a millionaire in the cattle business.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously never had that in mind, or I would have went to college.
Yeah. Well, I went to college and then I went to cowboying, so it was kind of a route I didn't need to take, but it was a hell of a lot of fun. But I never had any big illusions of making it rich cowboying. I enjoy the work, and it's just been a lot of fun. So anyhow, what kind of drew you to being a kind of a buckaroo gal?
I don't know. My story, I guess, is pretty weird. I was raised by bikers in northern Idaho. My dad is from Kuski, Idaho, which is a little, probably 500, 600 people there. Little logging town. He grew up on a ranch there, and my mom is from Long Beach, Southern California. And
okay.
She kind of grew up. My grandpa, her dad, built Harleys big time for like Evel Knievel and stuff like that. And
oh shit.
My dad was always kind of an outlaw, and he wanted to go to Southern California. He went there and met my mom, and she was quite a bit younger than him, but they ended up dating for a long time, and he swooped her away and took her to Idaho on his motorcycle, and they got married and had me. And I was just always raised around bikers and everybody coming through from all over, and I mean all over the world, really. And I was like predisposed to the kind of like nomad life, I guess, and the kind of outlaw life, I guess. But I can't, as far as I know, I do know, I was just born obsessed with cowboys and horses. I mean, Harleys and all that stuff was cool to me, and I liked listening to the old guys tell crazy stories, wild times and stuff like that. But I was always like wanted to be a cowboy ever since I was born, really. I was begging my parents for a horse when I was like 12. I got my first horse, and I just all throughout high school I was always on my horse or a motorcycle, and I just always wanted to be a cowboy. And I don't know, and when I got older, and then I listening to stories of my ancestors, I guess, like my biker grandparents telling me stories like, oh, your great uncle got hung for horse thieving in Missouri, and your great grandpa, I named my first horse after my great grandpa's horse. I got a picture of him and on his horse and all this stuff. And I always just figured it was in my blood because I had never had any like immediate family that I grew up around that were cowboys or interested in any of that kind of stuff. But I always just kind of, once I got older, attributed it to like it must be in my blood. But who knows?
Huh, so your grandpa got hung as a horse thief, huh? Or great granddad? Great uncle. Huh.
Yeah. And then another story on the other side of the family was a great grandpa like died on a colt, starting colts somewhere. I can't remember quite all the stories, but I always grew up around. I'd always go to my grandparents' house down in Kuski, where my dad was from, and like there's just boxes and boxes of black and white pictures of all the old cowboys in my family, like in the previous generation and the generation before that, and packing and cowboying and all that stuff. And I was just obsessed with it ever since I can remember. Those are some of my earliest memories, and I guess that's where it started.
Right on. Well, that's pretty cool. It's yeah, you're kind of a gypsy, it sounds like, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I was, and I thought like, oh, I found my place, I'll settle down here. But now I've been here for a year. I'm like, oh, I gotta go like learn other places, which I think is true. I mean, all of the best, greatest cowboys I've known like have worked everywhere, and that's, I think you can't just learn from one or two people. And like really out here, there's two really good cowboys out here that I really look up to and have taught me a lot. But I just feel like there's so many good ones out there, and I just want to go find them and work with all of them, or as many as I can. And I feel like that's how people really learn stuff. And
oh, for sure.
I like to work a lot of more places than here. But
yeah. Well, cool. I know. There's a lot of cowboys kind of get a bad name because they've been everywhere, and then there's some that they've been everywhere because they don't stay, so they can't stay very long because they're not a hand. And
yeah.
But then there's some that just they don't like to stay put. And but you can always tell. You can't really tell so much on the resume, like on the number of places they've been, but you can dang sure tell on the references. If they're a good hand, somebody will definitely tell you, yeah, I'd hire him back, hire her back. And I've had that a couple times in myself in the hiring process. I put on her front seat, and so I don't really look at the job history. I always kind of go by references, and and there's some guys that are not super handy with the rope or breaking a colt or whatever, but they know cattle, and they turn out to be a really good hand. And so it's you kind of gotta work to your strengths, and then work on your weaknesses. But a lot of it is just being able to read an animal, and that's can be taught, but more than anything, it's just kind of an instinct type deal.
Definitely.
And there's some that people just never figure that out, and for whatever reason, there's they're not born with that capability. And those are the ones that always think they're the best hands, it seems like.
I've definitely found that really, I mean, I don't know, in the past few years, I've worked with a couple guys that, they're good, they worked everywhere, but at the same time, there's just nothing humble about them, and that everything, it was just like, you couldn't even be around them with, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Just really, really prideful people, and I don't understand that.
I just hand him up here, I'll carry him.
I guess I don't have anything really to be prideful about. I'm not great at roping. I'm not a great hand really, but I work hard and I try hard, and I have several people that understand, like I haven't done this my whole life, so that there's something that I'm doing wrong, there's like, hey, do this instead, and that's great. But then I have other people that are just like, oh, he's an idiot, no, like, just reek of the super puncher deal, and I can't stand that. But I definitely, like, the more I do this and the more I work with different people, the more humbled I am. And I'm like, I don't know shit. Like, please teach me. And I definitely find that helps. Also, another thing, I think that being around horses most of my life and training horses since I was young, I found when I started working with cattle definitely helped when I started working with cattle, because I didn't know how to read horses, which actually what I've found is translated a lot into cattle, as far as like where you got to be for them to move a certain way and stuff like that. Like, so that was kind of cool to find out, I guess. And
well, yeah, I think you're right. That's kind of where I got my start too, horses, and horses just move a lot faster than cattle for the most part, and they've got a lot bigger flight zone too. So learn how to read that. Reading a cow is a little bit easier, it seems like. And cattle are quite a little bit more predictable than a horse. A horse you never really know. Cattle don't quite have the different personalities like a horse does, as much anyways.
Yeah.
Every single horse is different. You never do know what each one's personality is going to be till you spend at least a month in the saddle, really.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. There's always something for every horse that will set them off, and you never know what that's going to be either.
Yeah.
But sorry, I'm carrying this calf over to a pen. My horse I was riding did not like that calf slung over the saddle. So I had a rodeo on her hands, so
you're breaking up a little bit.
All right, here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I was carrying a calf we had a dairy heifer throw a calf early, and I tried to throw the calf over the saddle, but my horse was not having it. And so it had a little mini rodeo on her hands.
Still podcasting.
Yeah.
You bet.
You bet. Couldn't have picked a better person to have that happen with, so makes for a good story. That's one thing I've noticed about whether it be on the cowboy side or just any sort of independent thinking or outlaw type. It's not so much is this a good idea, but will it make a good story? That's kind of the decision-making process behind it.
Yeah, you pretty much pinned that one down. I'm all about a good story.
I am too. I don't know how many times where I was like, probably shouldn't have done that, but boy, it sure was fun.
I listened to the podcast where you mentioned listening to the Ramblin' Jack one. I'm really glad you listened to that, because I have sent that podcast to pretty much everybody I know or halfway know, because that guy is he's something else. I met him one time. I can't remember if I told you this. I met him at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering when I was living in Nevada at one point.
Oh, okay.
I was south of Wells, in between Wells and Ely.
Okay.
I was probably 22, and I went over to the Cowboy Poetry Gathering at end of January, beginning of February, and Ramblin' Jack, I think Saturday night, he was down at the Folk Life Center bar, and I had met these California hippie ladies, and they liked me and swooped me up, and we were hanging around and drinking and dancing and stuff, and I think they were doing maybe some psychedelics or something. I don't know, but they're having a good time.
Allegedly.
And we spot Ramblin' Jack, and I was like, you guys, look over there. It's Ramblin' Jack sitting there at the bar. And I'm like, what? And so I was like nervous, and I was like, well, we gotta go say hi to him. And so they walk up to him, and they're like, Jack, you want a pot brownie? And he takes it in his hand, and he looks at the gal, and he says, God bless your boobies. And then he eats it.
That is awesome.
It was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, but that's my only experience with Ramblin' Jack, and that is all I needed it, and I'll treasure it for the rest of my life.
Oh man, you can't beat that one. He is Ramblin' Jack. The more I find out about him, he's kind of like the cowboy version of Bill Murray. Like, he just kind of pops up at different places, and like, people always have a story about him that, you know, if it wasn't Ramblin' Jack or if it wasn't Bill Murray, nobody would ever believe it. But, you know, it's some ridiculous story where, like, you know, like that God bless your boobies, or Bill Murray, he'll show up and like steal somebody's French fry at the airport and then just he'll wink at him and be like, nobody will ever believe this, and just walk off. And you're like, well, of course he would. He's Bill Murray. That's exactly what he would do. And so that's kind of how I view Ramblin' Jack, you know, and I'm not super familiar with him, but I've been doing a little research into him, and everybody seems like they've got a story about him like that.
That's awesome. And yeah, I believe it. Actually, I mean, it wasn't a personal encounter with him. Another person you might want to interview, I don't know if you know Mike Beck at all. Have you heard of him at all?
No, I haven't.
He's another I think he's pretty good friends with Ramblin' Jack, and he's just a traveling troubadour. He kind of travels around and does horsemanship clinics and also plays shows. He's a cool guy, and I think he's friends with Ian Tyson too. I went and saw him in Livingston beginning of last summer. We were standing outside having a dart, and we're talking about Ramblin' Jack, got into talking about Ramblin' Jack, and he's like, yeah, you just left me this voicemail the other day. And he pulls out his little iPhone, and he shows me this like 8-minute voicemail, and you can see, and he pulls it up, and before it starts playing, you can see it transcribed on the phone, and it's obviously like 3 pages long.
Oh, that's
like,
awesome.
oh, this is gonna be good. He starts playing it, and it's like I don't know how long voicemails can be, but I'm sure it was as long as it could be.
That's awesome.
And he plays it for us on speaker, and it's the whole entire voicemail is talking about taking his old blue truck into town to get fixed. And it's like such a like mundane, boring story, but it's like it's hilarious, and he just goes on and on and on about it, and he's just talking about this truck. He's like, yeah, I pulled it out and it made this sound. It sounded like a chicken, and then it did this, and like blah 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 blah, and it just goes on and on and on about this pickup truck that wouldn't run. And it's just funny. It's like he just called Mike, and he just left him this voicemail really about nothing, but it's great.
That's awesome. My dad is kind of that way. He can take, like, I don't know if you listened to the episode I did with him, but when he was talking about his water wars, which if it doesn't really directly affect you, can be really a dry topic. It's just, you know, basically it's there's companies drilling a bunch of wells, and it's gonna tap into the water table, which is already low, and it's gonna make a bunch of people's wells run dry, and it's in just the very southeast corner of Colorado where nobody fucking lives, and nobody really cares. But he has a way to tell them the story that, like, I know basically all the ins and outs of the case at the moment, but I still love hearing about it because he always has a way of saying shit that just makes it interesting. And I guess that's kind of, I always caught a bunch of shit from my college buddies for taking too long to tell a story. But I was like, you can't properly tell a story if you just like straightforward tell it. You've got to add some backstory. You've got to add some details that you know. If you don't know this part, then this part's not as good. And I don't know, that's just kind of, it's one of those things that it's a style of telling a story that it's so unique, just kind of to cowboy culture. I don't know. Waddy tried to explain it a little bit, and part of his made sense. And I don't know if there's any certain particular reason why, but every one of those good storytellers on the, it's an old cowboy. Just they all have stories like that. You're just like, where the hell are they going with this? But you're laughing the whole time, or you're just sitting. You might as well be sitting cross-legged with your hands on your knees listening to them.
Exactly, yeah. I liked that one you did with Waddy. I did get to listen to that, and he was able to. You guys both were able to hash it out pretty good, I think. I that's another thing too. I mean, I grew up around bikers, and it was the same deal, just about different topics, but the same in a way. Wild and crazy shit, just traveling around and doing whatever, but on bikes instead of horses. And I've always been interested in that. And I remember growing up and being a teenager and partying all the time and doing whatever. And with my friends, we'd run into some old guy somewhere at a bar or whatever. And they'd be like, oh, this guy again, he'll talk your ear off for 4 hours about one thing. But I always loved that.
Yeah.
That's my favorite now, especially now that I get to be around cowboys more, because that's the kind of stories I want to hear. And they'll go on and on about something, and sometimes it's not interesting, but usually I just like listening to people. So that's probably why I like podcasts so much. So I don't have to talk as much.
That's funny. Yeah. I really thought I was kind of on to something. I just didn't know. I didn't think this thing would take off as quick as it had. And, but it's cool to hear all these old stories. And it's funny, a lot of times in college, if we were at, just like a small dive type bar, while my buddies were out hitting on the ladies, it seemed like 9 times out of the 10, I would end up at the end of a bar with a gray-haired old man, and we'd just be shooting the shit till all hours of the night.
Same here.
And we'd be swapping stories and just having a good old time. And so I was never known as much of a wingman, because I'd always end up talking to the gal's dad instead of trying to steer him towards my buddy. I would always end up talking to their dad or grandpa, and be like, hey, you should date this girl. Her dad's cool as shit.
Yeah. Oh man, that's really funny. That reminds me so much of where I've been, and except for it was, you should really date my son.
Yeah. I've had a couple guys like, you really ought to meet my daughter, and then I was like, well, I really don't know if he wants that. And then and it was kind of how when I met my father-in-law, I went to it was the first night I spent the night over with my wife, and she's like, well, my dad's up, so you got to meet him. And he was in town visiting, and like 45 minutes later, Ro is headed downstairs to go to bed, and she's like, come on already. And I was like, what? We're having a good chat here. And he's kind of an old Nevada mountain man. He was actually born in Montana, but he grew up around Reno back before Reno got so damn big. And so he's kind of an outlaw, like you said, and he for somebody who claims to hate people, he can sure talk to them for a long time. And we ended up bullshitting for like an hour that first time I met him, and my wife was like, let's go to bed already. And I was like, oh, fine. I guess I'm being summoned. Good to meet you, Steve. And so I don't know, that's just kind of how I've always been. But those guys always have the best stories, because even though there's a lot of bullshit to their stories, there's always a grain of truth to it, and they know how to spin it to where it really makes everything interesting.
Yeah, I think certain people are just blessed with it, being able to tell a good story. I mean, I guess with certain stories maybe I am, but I'm more of a listener myself.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, I don't know. You've got a knack for finding good stuff, anyways. Because everything you've sent my way, I've really enjoyed, and I guess I kind of curious on how have you been received? You know, being a woman and not in a managerial type role, but just straight up cowboy. And how has that been for you? Guys been pretty cool for the most part, or?
Yeah. Well, honestly, no.
No.
I actually, I've worked all over doing this stuff, and I haven't worked very many cowboy jobs, but I kind of, let's see, was that before? Okay, so, well, trying to put things in order here. I think the first kind of like real cowboy deal that I had was in Mexico, and that was.
Oh, imagine.
That was
imagine.
on the. You think things are hard here. You want to try to be a cowboy in Mexico as a woman. That's.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
But luckily, oh God, that was weird.
Did they call you Blondie? Hey, Blondie. Oh, perfect.
Weta Polvo, which is Missy Blonde. Apparently it was some movie or something. I don't know. Weta Polvo.
I don't guess I know. That's funny. So did you learn to speak Spanish very well while you're down there?
Yeah, I had worked with people from Mexico before in Nevada, so I think that's kind of. I took like Spanish in high school, but that didn't teach me much. But when I was in Nevada, I worked with a bunch of Mexicans, and I started really learning it there. And then when I went to Mexico, I was the only English speaker there, besides the son, who was there once a month or so, and he would be around, but he wasn't around much. And I think I was kind of able to convey to them that I knew enough, at least, that I was able to tell them like I really wanted to learn Spanish. So it was like everybody was constantly pointing at things to me and saying what the name of it was. And
nice.
So I learned a lot there, very, very fast, way more than you could learn in high school. And I was only there for 2 or 3 months, but I learned a lot there, and I'm still learning, and I work with a guy from Mexico right now, so he talks in Spanish all the time around me and to me sometimes, and so I'm still learning, and I just really love Spanish, and I'd like to be fluent in it someday. But yeah, Mexico was weird. Being a girl working on a cattle ranch was very weird.
I imagine. It's one of those deals where it's still very much a man's world. It's not that women don't get appreciated, but it's just every time you're saddling up at the barn and a woman walks in, it's just like the conversation goes silent because some people are just uncomfortable with a woman be there, and then there's other people who don't know what to say, and then there's me that I really don't care either way. I've worked with enough women over my life that I have no problem working with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
I just at the end of the day, I just expect everybody to do their job, and that's where we'll get crossways, is if somebody's not working, and that's the way it should be.
Man or women,
yeah, and then there's certain women that they want to be treated equal, but yet they want special privileges.
I totally see that all the time. And in Mexico, I respected it really, because that's their old tradition, like a lot of the times they'd be like, oh, we gotta go or open Dr. Yearlings, and like when the jefe, like the old guy that actually owned the place was around, he'd be like, oh, you can't go, you're a woman, like it's dangerous. And I would be like, oh gosh, and roll my eyes. But at the same time, I respect it, it's not out of being rude, or I don't know what the word for it's called.
Chauvinistic, I guess.
It's not out of that. It's just out of their culture and the way that is, and wanting to take care of women, and that's goes way, way back, even in the United States, and like so. I respect it, but at the same time, it's hard when they're around, because then I couldn't. go and do what I wanted to do and learn there. But a lot of times they weren't around, and there were younger cowboys out there, Mexican cowboys that were into it, and I'd be riding along right beside them and like learning all sorts of stuff, and that was cool. But yeah, it's the same thing here. It's just, but in Mexico it was a lot more old school in that way, like sort of a woman's place is in the kitchen making tortillas, which is also really cool because we got hand slap tortillas fresh every day. So
oh man, that doesn't get any better. My Aunt Louise is she's an older Mexican lady, but her family is on the New Mexico side of the border. So, but they've been there for generations, and you always know you're in good when a Mexican woman calls you mijo, because you are going to be treated like a king. Yeah. But every time I show up somewhere where she's at, it's always pork green chili, beans, and homemade tortillas. And somebody could founder themselves on that stuff.
Yeah, you can't beat that. I lived in New Mexico too, which actually is New Mexico is, I gotta go back there, but New Mexico is cool because they kind of got their own language and their own food and everything, and music. I didn't even realize that till I lived there, but
it's a whole different. I thought, because I grew up about 45 minutes from Clayton, New Mexico, and so I was in the 5-state area. It was Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, Panhandle, Texas Panhandle, and then New Mexico, all right there within about 60 miles where I grew up. And so we put green chili on everything, everything, on everything. And I thought it was just a well-known deal. And then I moved out of that part of the world, and there's like green chilies. And you're like, jalapenos? I'm like, no, like Anaheim chili, Hatch green chili.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Green, red, or Christmas?
Green, red, or Christmas? I like the Christmas. That's a tough one. I'm going to have to say green is my first love, though.
Same here. And then Christmas is like sometimes if I was feeling wild, but New Mexico, that's the only place they ask you at. Pretty much anywhere you go to eat. You get French fries, they ask you green, red, or Christmas.
I know. I told my neighbor, his wife's family is from New Mexico, and they went down there this summer on vacation. I was like, well, the thing is in New Mexico, I said, go find the best burger joint in town. And I said, I don't care if that's McDonald's. If it's the best burger joint in town, get a green chili cheeseburger, and that'll be one of the best burgers you've ever ate in your life.
Yes.
And he took me up on it. He's like, holy shit, this is good. I told you. And they don't spare the green chilies at all. And like one of the best pizzas I've ever ate was at a Pizza Hut buffet, and it was just pepperoni with flame roasted green chilies, and it was amazing.
Oh man, I bet. I even still up here, I've taken, ever since I lived in New Mexico, I've taken the green chili addiction everywhere I've been, and now, I mean, it's funny because when you pretty much, I mean, this goes for, I kind of gauge it on huevos rancheros, but once you get out of New Mexico and you cross into Colorado, like the huevos rancheros change. So like down in New Mexico, it's, you know, it's like the classic like refried beans with a pound of lard in them, and like your corn tortillas and your homemade hash browns with your eggs over easy and your green or red or Christmas. And, and then you go north, and then it's like the further you go north, the more they morph into like an American version of huevos. So like you go to Colorado, and then they change the homemade refried beans to like refried beans from a can, or black beans, or something, or flour tortillas. You
must have been eating in the wrong spots in Colorado, because there's
I must have been.
Because the big difference between Colorado and New Mexico green chili is Colorado, they put a little more flour into it, so it's more like a gravy than the New Mexico, where it's a little more runny, more like a soup.
Yeah.
And Colorado is little thicker, more like a gravy. And but there's some damn good Mexican food in Colorado. There is a definitely a difference in the cuisine. And of course, that part of the world, all the Mexican folks are from Chihuahua, and then out here in Nevada and California, it seems like they're all from Jalisco, and so you got a little different culture there. It's still basically the same, kind of like the U.S. It's basically the same culture, but there's little variations.
Well, at the very least, you have huevos rancheros in Montana. It's going to be a lot different from New Mexico.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's the same way with barbecue up there, too. If anything that they consider barbecue is basically just a grilled piece of meat with barbecue sauce slapped on it. It's like, well, no, go down south a little ways to where some real barbecue is. But it's the cuisine's pretty white up in the Montana way. I found out pretty quick.
You probably are safe to probably not order burrito up here or anything of the like.
Yeah, if you just stick with a burger or a steak or something along those lines, any good like comfort food style cooking, you know.
Yeah, great steak up here.
Yeah, but if you're looking for like good barbecue or good Mexican food, you better just travel south a ways, and you'll be better off.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty neat. I've kind of got a soft spot for New Mexico. I just grew up real close there. Clayton, New Mexico is where they hung Blackjack Ketchum. He was one of the last bank robbers of the Old West era, and he kind of ran with the Dalton gang for a while, and then he had his own gang, and they caught him, and I guess they injured him pretty good when he was robbing this train or bank. I can't remember which, but they've got pictures of the deal in the Eklund Hotel there in Clayton, New Mexico. But when they hung him, nobody had really ever hung anybody there before, and so they put the noose on him and strung him up, and they dropped the trap door, and it didn't break his neck because they didn't tie the rope right, or they didn't stretch it right or something. And so they, rather than just letting him choke out, they pulled him back up, and they reset the noose, and then they hung weights to his feet, dropped the trap door, and it ended up popping his head off.
Damn.
Yeah, and they've got pictures of it in the Eklund Hotel, and it popped his head right off. And so my dad and his good buddy Dean Ormston. Dean was born about 100 years too late. This guy, he wears black shotguns, fringe all the way down, black leather vest, and at any given time he's got at least 2 guns on him and probably 4 or 5 knives. Got a ring on every finger. And
yes, turquoise.
Oh yeah, turquoise and silver, like you wouldn't believe. His mustache length varies, depends on when it breaks off in the wind.
I would love to talk to that guy.
I'm gonna get him on too. He's a good guy. He's kind of a crotchety old asshole, but if he likes you, he likes you. I mean, if he likes you, you are solid. If he don't,
those are the good ones.
He'll let you know real quick if he don't like you. And but Dean, they had this they called it Kirkwell Cattle Company, and they still do it some, but they're both getting old and kind of crippled up. But they do these trail rides, but it wasn't like a dude ranch type trail ride where you go out in a string and ride for a couple miles and then loop on back at a walk. It's we're saddling up. They didn't leave very, very early, but we'd ride out about 8:39, something like that. But you would ride all fucking day, and it was most of it was at a long trot.
You want to ride a horse, motherfucker?
Yeah, pretty well. And you talk about, I mean, you've never heard more bitching in your life, but people loved it. They were sore, but they loved it. And you had to be tough. We'd take care of you once we were done riding for the day, but you just had to get to where we were going. And so whether that was just find your happy place and bounce along, or embrace it. You know, it was
That's awesome.
yeah, and he. But they used to do. We have this Equinox Festival in Springfield, Colorado, because down in the canyon countries there in southeast Colorado, southwest Baca County is exactly where it's at. There's a bunch of sandstone canyons, and there was a lot of Indian activity back in the day, so there's a lot of petroglyphs and stuff on the canyon walls. And there's this one cave, and it's just a crack in the side of the canyon wall. And on the two equinoxes every year is the only time you can see the petroglyphs on the inside of the cage by natural sunlight.
Wow.
The sun shines in there just perfect on the equinoxes that you can see all those writings on the wall by natural sunlight, and it's really cool. But they do a Equinox Festival every year, and my dad and Dean and a couple of their buddies, they would do a reenactment of the Blackjack Ketchum hanging. And so Dean would be sitting on his horse, and they'd put a watermelon over on top of his trench coat, and then of course they'd ride off, and the watermelon would break and splatter everywhere, and then they'd have a little shootout deal there in the it was always at the courthouse yard, and it was really pretty neat. They haven't done it in a long time, but it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And so that's a little insight into what I grew up doing. That's kind of, if it gives you a little insight into the way my mind works nowadays. But so I guess I was conditioned to just look for the absurdity in everything, and see how you can make a good story out of it. But anyhow, I think we're going to doctor some calves, Cass, so I better let you go. But hey, it was good talking to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you. Thanks for thinking I'm interesting enough on Instagram to want to chat.
Oh, hell yeah. It was fun. You got a cool story. We'll get you back on one of these days and see we'll get an update from Calamity Cass.
Perfect.
All right, well, tell everybody where they can find you if you want them to find you, or what. You got a leather business too as well, right?
Yeah, in the summertime it's a little it's basically dead in the summertime, but after fall works is over, I'll start back up. I got my shop down on the river by the feedlot, and you can if you're interested, order some custom stuff from me on Instagram. I'm Calamity Cass. It's calamity.cass. And get a hold of me. I'll try to make you some stuff through the winter, or tell me a story, or send hate mail or love letters or whatever you want.
Cool. Well, perfect. Well, you want to sign us off?
Sign us off? What does that mean?
Oh, you know my sign off. I know you do. I know you listen.
I do. I've listened to probably half of your podcasts, but the problem is like I download them and then
7.5.
7.5?
Sorry, I was talking to that's the temperature.
7.5. I sign off. Adios, Burnin Daylight burners.
We're so move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Move your ass.
We're burning daylight.
Burning daylight.
Perfect. All right. Well, Cass, I appreciate it, and you have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye, Matt.
All right. Bye.
Well, folks, there you have it. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on, Cass, and telling your stories. I'd like to have you back on again. You got a lot of cool stories to tell, it sounds like. So anyway, you guys go follow her. It's calamity.cass, at calamity.cass on Instagram. And winter's just around the corner. She'll be opening up her leather shop again, so make sure you get something ordered. And go check her out. And go find me on Facebook, Matt McKinley, at MakerMac85 on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Go follow the show pages, Burnin Daylight on Facebook and YouTube, and at Move Your Ass on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. That's MOVEYERASS. And go check out my website, burnin-daylight.com. You can read some of my blog posts. I'm going to get some more photo galleries put up. I just haven't got around to it yet. And also there's my storefront there. So go order a hat. Get signed up for fantasy football if you wanna join in. Still got some spots left. And yeah, go check it all out. Give me a rating, a review, all that good stuff on your podcast listening devices. If that's an option, go ahead and do it, please. It would help me out immensely. And other than that, just keep tuning in every day. Be cool, be good, don't be a dick to each other, and we'll do it all again tomorrow. So on that note, I got some editing to do, so move your ass with Burnin Daylight.
From the first light of dawn, worrying if dying one of them horns stuck in my belly is worth being born. Stuck in the saddle for finding $1 a day. Well, I'll never get rich, I found out too soon. I never can seem to get past the saloon. Cowboy and money don't mix, can't you see? They meet only briefly, then part company. Stuck in the saddle for finding $1 a day. $1 a day, dirty and found, days in the saddle and nights on the ground. Sometimes I wonder if I should stay, stuck in the saddle for finding $1 a day. $1 a day, 30 and found, days in the saddle and nights on the ground. Sometimes I wonder if I should stay, stuck in the saddle for found and $1 a day.